Anyway, please focus your attention now on the screen for a very special message.
Congratulations, Bob, on the honor you are receiving from the American Council on Germany. This tribute is more than greatly deserved because no one has done more to improve and cement U.S.-German relations than you have. I can testify from firsthand personal experience that you were the State Department official who was most critically involved on the issue of German unification. You were our Sherpa at this important moment at the end of the Cold War. Not only were you instrumental in formulating the idea of the 2+4 process, you were essential to its implementation. German unification remains a textbook example of the way American diplomacy should be practiced, and its historical significance and achievement will stand the test of time. Bravo, Bob. I can think of no one more fitting to receive the American Council on Germany's Leadership Award.
One of the great secretaries of state in American history, and on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the American Council on Germany, it's my honor to present Robert Zoellick with the 2021 Transatlantic Leadership Award.
All right,
thanks so much.
So John, I don't know if you do memorial events, but if so, maybe we could book you. I don't have a particular date in mind, but maybe sometime in the future, further off. It's a real pleasure to be here with all of you tonight, and with John, with all his devotion to ACG and the relationship between our two countries. Steve, who's done a fantastic job. David, thank you for the work that you've done for many years in New York, and I'm glad you'll be able to be with us a little further. And it's a particular privilege to also receive this honor with Oliver at the same time. Like Oliver with his position for Allianz, I'm honored to receive this on the behalf of Americans and Germans who worked extremely closely together in that 89-90 time period. The Americans involved were privileged to be the last in a long line of people, of Americans who tried to keep a promise over 40 years to Germans about not only supporting German democracy, but also Germany unity. So we went from Freiheit über Einheit to Freiheit und Einheit. Now, interestingly, if you start to look at some of the histories of this period, they focus heavily on the Russia question, particularly that of Gorbachev. But in 1989-90, the United States was focused heavily on the German question, and our ally Germany came first. And Deidre alluded to some of this in her comments. In the 17th and 18th and part of the 19th centuries, the German question referred to the many smaller German states and principalities that were at the heart of Europe, manipulated by their neighbors who were empires. After 1871, the German question became, how do you deal with a large, powerful state in the middle of Europe without natural borders? After 2 world wars in the early 20th century, the solution was 2 German states. And West Germany became integrated in the European communities and linked with the United States through the transatlantic relationship in NATO. Therefore, in conducting US policy in 1989, we were trying to operate with both a historical and a strategic perspective. We trusted German democracy. Many people don't recall that President Bush said as early as May of '89, so months before the wall came down, that he looked forward and welcomed the notion of German unity. At the same time, however, we wanted to try to make sure that unification of Germany took part within a unification of a Europe whole and free. So we wanted to make sure that Germany was united within NATO, and with a European Union that would deepen and we hoped would widen. Yet the strategy also had to recognize the fast-moving events on the ground. The German people, both East and West, became a force of diplomacy, as Berliners had in 1948, 1953, 1961. And a stall in diplomacy could have triggered a crisis. On the other hand, we recognized that we could use the momentum of the German people on the ground to press governments that were reluctant to move forward with unification. And to connect that strategy with the events on the ground, we came up with the idea of the 2+4 process. And so to understand this sort of unusual equation, the idea was to make sure that the two Germanys were in the forefront and that they were working on the internal aspects of unification. And then they would join with the four powers after World War II in dealing with the external questions. This occurred only within 10 months. November 1989, the wall comes down, the final settlement agreement is done in September, and unification is in October. Now, a final word on that for today. While we were thinking historically in 1989 and 90 and dealing with the immediate, President Bush and Secretary Baker were also trying to look ahead. And we recognized, as everybody in this room recognizes, that a united Germany would become the most influential country in Europe. And we hoped that that special relationship that we developed would lead to a future partnership with Germany, but also within the European Union and with NATO. And so, as time has gone on, I always try to remind people that we'd be absolutely foolish to let these countries drift apart, or worse, permit a break. And that's where the American Council on Germany comes in and all of your support. Because this organization has worked over the years, including with the critical Young Leaders Program, to keep people understanding at a human level the important relationships between these countries and the transatlantic relationships. So I want to thank all of you for supporting that, for your support here tonight, and for the work that I know the ACG will do in the future. Now, you've all been very patient, and so you deserve one joke of a story from the German unification process. And again, Deidre kind of she may not have realized this, but she should have foreshadowed this story I'm going to tell you. In international relations, when you do a big treaty or agreement, you obviously have to make sure it's exactly the same in all the languages of the principal countries. So in the 2+4 process, we obviously had German, but we also had French and Russian and English. And if you think of the 6 countries involved, there were 2 countries that at least claimed to speak English, Great Britain and the United States. So we had to share the drafting responsibilities with our friends in Britain in the FCO, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Now, as many of you may know, the British are very proud of what they think is their language. And so when it came time to drafting the most sensitive parts, and this brings it to Deidre, which is the question of the borders of this new united Germany, we decided that we'd turn that task over to our British colleagues. If you look at the final settlement agreement, you can see that people wanted to make sure they got this right. We wanted to make sure that the united Germany was united democratically, but we wanted to make sure we got the borders nailed down. And so the text at one point will say, the new united Germany will consist of the Federal Republic of Germany, the West Germany, the German Democratic Republic, East Germany, but also Greater Berlin, which was the old 4-power effort sort of left over from World War II. So you can imagine the surprise I had when I saw the text drafted by our British colleagues, and it said, the new united Germany will consist of the Federal Republic of Germany, okay, German Democratic Republic, okay, and Greater Britain. True story. So I know there's been a lot of sensitivity with Brexit, but I just want all of you to know that when the moment of crisis came, the British are willing to make the ultimate sacrifice.